let's talk about the 3 C's. I love acronyms. I love chunking information together. I actually love threes. Trinities are the most powerful configurations that there are in the universe. We live in a world that's pretty polarized, which means we've got one on one end of the spectrum or one on the other. So we've got this duality mindset. Trinities give us a third space, another way to get out of if this, then that. It gives us an either or what I call a both and perspective. So Trinities are really cool. Actually, here's a little snippet of information. The brain can only hold on to 3 things really effectively. 5 if you're doing a lot of work on your own neuroplasticity. So threes are really important in lots of ways in the personal development and leadership space. So I want to tell you what the 3 C's are. I've talked some more on some other videos about this. Being a woman, being a minority in a corporate world, a lot of times what I realize is clients will come to me and say, I'm really struggling. I teach a lot in the DE&I space about beliefs, and companies will bring people in, spit out a couple of things of information, and expect people to be more diverse, more inclusive, to offer more equality, more equity. And what I find is it's not deep enough. We're not talking about the elephant in the room, and that's the 3 C's. So I've talked before about power and privilege, and when people walk in the room and they have power and privilege, it's a lot easier for them to move up and to be successful in life. It's just a fact. All the research shows it. If you don't believe me, you can go check out Robert Livingston. He's a professor out of Harvard. He studies racial inequities, wrote a great book called The Conversation. And it's really the conversation we need to be having about racism in our world. And this is where the 3 C's evolved from. And I had a chance to teach with him recently. And he talked about this. And he said, as minorities, we don't have the same opportunities to go forward in life, to reach success, to acquire certain things. And he said there are 3 things that minorities have to have in order to succeed. And so as he told me what the 3 were, I said, gosh, that would be like, we should turn that into something called the 3 C's. And so this is what they are. If you are a woman, you are of any minority category whatsoever in the world, this applies to you. And he says the first one is you must have, and I'm looking at my notes here, he says you must have unquestionable, unshakable confidence when you walk in the room. Now let's just pause there for a second. When we have a belief that we're not worthy, we're not good enough, when we've got that old narrative running, which has kept us suppressed and kept us in a place of powerlessness, what happens is we walk in a room and we just want to play it small. We want to shrink down. We want to head off to the side of the room, get out of sight, don't cause any issues, don't rock the boat. And he says for minorities, in order for us to really change social norms, to break through limiting beliefs in our own mind, but also social norms in corporate and in communities, he said you have to have unshakable, unquestionable confidence. When you walk in a room, you have to own it. So I want to ask you, how much work have you been doing to learn to walk in a room? And confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is walking in and being so grounded to the truth of who you are that when you walk in, nothing that anyone says or does can knock you off course on the belief that you hold about yourself. If you're not able to be really anchored into that truth of who you are, people will see through you in a hot second, and they'll pick up on some insecurities and some weaknesses. So the first thing we have to do when we're in any place as a minority and we're doing our own personal development or leadership development work, we have to cultivate confidence. And it comes from the belief inside of us that we are enough, that we matter, that we have value simply because we exist. Now, I'm not getting into another controversial video here about this topic, but I do want to mention this. When we talk about racism, and Brene Brown mentions this, and she says the Black Lives Matter movement is important because when you dehumanize a race, you must make just as much effort and put the energy in to rehumanize the race. So saying to someone, oh, you just need to be confident when they've lived an entire life or generations of not being able to walk in a room and hold power, it's almost impossible to learn to do. So we go within ourselves to learn to cultivate it for ourselves, but we show up and we practice that confidence in safe spaces so we can learn to make changes out in the world. So the first C is confidence. Second one is, he says, you must have unwavering commitment. And this is really important, but it also leads to a really big thing called burnout. And he says the second C, this commitment, he said it has to be unwavering. You have to get up day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and sometimes generation after generation to break free from generational beliefs that have been holding you and or your family members back. Our biology actually is connected to our belief systems. So we pass that along. So these beliefs where we think we have to get up and prove ourselves as minorities, it's twice as hard, if not 10 times as hard to walk in a room. So now I've got to focus on being unrattled and walk in and show you I am confident and anchored in the truth and in who I am when the world is not telling me that story. Then I've got to come in and I've got to have unwavering commitment. Well, that eventually could lead to burnout. And he says, when you're in this game of personal development and you're learning to ask the questions and get a seat at the table and grow and evolve and move yourself forward, he said, if you don't stick with the game long enough, you will quit because you get tired, overwhelmed, and burn out. And he said, so what happens is you have to ask yourself, am I willing to keep showing up? Am I willing to keep taking a hit on the chin? And most of us quit far before we ever get to where it is that we want to be. And I know because it took me almost 10 years to figure out how I could move from doing everything power and privileged people did to being who I was, a woman, a mom, all of the things that make me who I am in order to find the success that I was looking for. The third one he talks about, and I definitely think this one is an important one to mention, he said you must have unmatched credentials. So he said minorities walking into any situation in the workplace, in the world, they have to have sterling credentials and sometimes double, if not triple, the credentials of somebody that has power and position in order to even be considered to be an option, whether it's a promotion, a role, a leadership position. You have to have the credentials and then you have to have them double, even sometimes triple. And I think about that for myself. So as a female coach, I've done over 12 certifications. And at some point I kept asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I felt the need that I had to learn more. But then I realized I was also getting the credentials because it takes me twice the credentials in work to get the same attention and effort as a counterpart that's already got power and privilege that's in the room. I've run into it as a coach. I've run into it as a consultant. I've run into it with clients that I've worked with before. So we have to talk about the credentials. You know, you can't just do one thing and get the same thing somebody else has done if they've already passed go on the Monopoly board and they're getting twice the income when they pass go as you are, you're never going to catch them. So these 3 C's are really sensitive topics. They're really important to talk about. We have to talk about how do we build confidence? How do we look at that space of commitment and that space of credentialing in a way that isn't seen as an arrogant and I'm always selling myself and always positioning myself? But the truth is, as minorities, we do have to do that. We do have to position ourselves. We do have to promote ourselves. And so I say that from a female's perspective. I don't know about the other minorities, but I know minorities in general in the research, whether you're Asian, Hispanic, Black, whether it's gender, sexual norms, whatever it is that puts you in a minority, you're already underwater. And what I want to invite you to do is start to think about how can you learn to go within, cultivate the belief of being able to walk in with a confident sense of self. How can you walk in a room and name your credentials in a way that asks people and inspires them to want to work with you? And then how can you not give up on yourself and the generations of people that came before you and that are going to come after you, that you're helping to make a change in these social norms? Why do we do personal development and leadership development? I'm personally doing it to shift, to alter the social norms that are out there. Dr. Livingston says this. He says, once you understand these 3 C's and what you're up against when you're out there changing your behaviors, growing, evolving, trying to be in all of this work, he said you have 3 choices. You can either learn to play the game, you can either learn to change the game, or you can leave the game altogether. And what he means by that is you can quietly play the game. You can keep showing up. You can keep practicing being confident, talking about your credentials, and day by day continuing with that commitment to make small changes. And if you're one of those people, we need you. Because he says we need players at all 3 levels. If you're the second player that says, I'm going to change the game, I'm going to be a rebel with a cause, I'm going to come in and I'm not going to get distracted, I'm really going to go into some destruction. There's something called a positive defiance in the workplace. These are these idea people who break molds, who ask questions. They're super creative, but most of the time when power and position and privilege are threatened, they get shut down. These people really reach burnout a lot quicker and can live in burnout and then actually begin to suffer because they think, I don't have any value. So if you're one of these people, and I've been a rebel for most of my life, where you're questioning the status quo, my language would be you're having the Jesus in the temple moment where you're turning everything over and you've had enough. Don't quit. We need you too, because we need those moments when people begin to break down walls, literally and figuratively. We need to see different perspectives. So that second piece is just as important. So if you find yourself there at some point or you live there, please keep going. Remember to do it with some kindness and compassion and not do it with the same villainism that the other people that are doing it to you are doing it. But we need those people that are at the second level that are disruptors. They change the game. And then the third one, which I feel like as I did my shut up and sit work and as I went through my own personal growth and now teach other people to do it, this is the one I'm choosing to play in. And I've left the game altogether. I'm not interested in getting out there and arguing with people. I'm not interested in playing nice and eating a shit sandwich or eating a shit with a fork and a knife anymore. Really, I want to change and walk away, and I want to actually leave the game altogether. So here's where I'm going with personal development and leadership development. And yes, I think they're a little bit different. I'd actually say everybody could benefit from leadership development because you're a leader of your own life, your family, your community, in many, many different ways. We all have leadership potential. And so when I say leaving the game, what I mean is I want to keep walking down the path. Richard Rohr says there's 9 levels of personal development, and most people end up stopping around 2 or 3. I want to keep going all the way to the 9th. I want to create a new game. And this new game, most of the world is turning left and they're getting caught by all the glitz and the glamour and they're distracted. I'm turning the other direction. And sometimes I feel like I could go weeks or months without running into another human being. But by going in this other direction of changing the game around getting people to get it, to put it together, to find joy, to find peace, to find equanimity, cultivate compassion, empathy, all these things that connect us as human beings. That's what I'm challenging people to do, and I'm challenging myself to do, is I don't want to be a part of the game anymore. I'm not interested in what people are selling. I'm not interested in buying a version of somebody else and trying it on. I want to be me. I want to help people learn how they can also be me. I have a great talk called This Is Me. I love to teach it. It teaches people how to write their own unique value proposition. So when I say I'm leaving the game and going in a different direction, it's okay if the masses don't follow me. I just don't choose to live in a world where I can't show up with confidence, my commitment is challenged, and then my credentials are questioned at every step of the way. So if that's a world that you live in or you decide to play in at any point of these 3 levels, we need all 3. And this is a serious call to action, asking you to keep doing the work. Keep asking the questions, keep showing up with these 3 C's, because the world needs all of us to invite people into a new social norm. We're not going to get power because we take it. We're going to empower ourselves because we believe we already are it, and that's going to help other people feel safe in our presence, and they're going to want to show up and be empowered too. So as I leave this game of personal development and leadership development behind, the faces, the Tony Robbins of the world and all these things from the 80s and 90s, this whole belief around what personal development was that I got sucked into for multiple decades and thousands of dollars, what I've chosen to do is say, I don't know what's down this other path, but all I know is if I go down it, I might find a different way to live and a different way to be. So I invite you into that journey with me. If you want to head down the path with me, you can check out the website, sitwithyetta.com. I look forward to walking that journey with you.